There are two sides to every story. The National Broadcasting Company presents the vivid drama of life itself. Broadcasting's original program of Mediation, the Court of Human Relations. And now the man who has familiarized millions of people with the idea of mediation helped to make it a creative force in American life. A.L. Alexander.
In a dispute, when a person leans toward one side of a question, for motives or considerations other than those which justly belong to it, he is being what is called prejudiced. Thus it has been said, I mistrust the judgment of every person in a case in which his own wishes are concerned. One man's word is no man's word. We should quietly hear both sides. Now we turn to our mediators. The famed American novelist, Miss Fannie Hurst. Noted consultant and authority in the field of adult education, Dr. Ralph Emerson Davis. A great contributor to the interests and ideals of mankind on every level, pastor of renowned Riverside Church, Dr. Robert J. McCracken. Now, the parties in dispute here are admittedly so close to the situation that they seek an impartial view after hearing all of the pertinent facts and after telling them. Now, where would you say the merits lie in this case? Here is the complainant.
Members of the board, when a girl marries, is it unnatural for her to want a child? I'm 23 years of age, and as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to.
Yes, well now suppose I ask you some questions. This is Miss Hurst, Dr. Davis, Dr. McCracken.
Yes.
Did you always want a family of your own?
Yes, I've always wanted to marry and have a family of my own. I never thought to pursue a career. When I met my husband 2 years ago, he indicated that he loved me and that he shared the same desires for a home and family. As a matter of fact, he had custody of 2 children by a former marriage, and when I was introduced in their company, I was called their future mommy. Well,
Did he tell you anything about being their mother?
yes, he said that I would be their future mother. And as it is now, the children are not with us. I am not their mother, I'm not their stepmother, I'm just an outsider. And anytime we choose to discuss this, I get inadequate excuses and just unpleasantness.
And the specific issue is concerned with the fact, as we understand it, that at the time you married this young man, he promised you that within what period?
Within 2 years, we would have the children. They would
And
be
that
living
you-
with us and that I would be their mother.
Now, how do you feel about that?
Well, we did discuss it before we were married, that the children should naturally be with the parents eventually, but I didn't really make any promises. Everything I said was based on would and could and maybe. There was nothing definite decided. I did indicate that maybe in a period of a year or 2 years when I was better off financially that we would have the children, but until then it would be kind of tough until my financial status was better.
Well, what did you figure she married you for?
Well, I figured that when a person marries, she married me for me, not for any outside influence. If this marriage depended on the fact that the 2 children come and live with us, then I don't think it's really much of a marriage. I think that just having each other should be enough.
Well, I feel this way, that if I wanted to be a career girl instead of a parent, I would have remained single. I didn't have to get married. And I wouldn't have gotten married had I known that I wouldn't be a mother and that I couldn't have these children. As it is now, we don't see the children very often. I don't have an opportunity to be a mother to them.
And you feel that he distinctly said, and that was a part of the arrangement, that you would have the children.
Yes, it was, yes.
Will you tell us something about your feeling at the time you married and about where the children are and so forth?
Well, when I was very grateful, actually, in the beginning to have gotten custody of the children. And my grandparents, who are pretty well fixed, so to speak, they bought a home out on the island in a beautiful environment for the express purpose of taking in the children, because at the time of my divorce, I wasn't able to take care of them. So the children are going to school out there, they're with their grandparents, and they're in a place for kids where kids would really enjoy themselves. And, well, I think that to take them away from all this and to bring them to the city is kind of a tough order. I don't think it would be doing them any good at all.
You think they have advantages there that they couldn't have here?
Exactly.
Well, I don't feel that way. I hold nothing against the grandparents. I think they're very wonderful, but I believe that if my husband were thinking of the good of the children, that he would realize it's more important for them to have a father and a mother. As a matter of fact, it isn't the children's grandparents at all. It's their great-grandparents who are caring for them.
It's your husband's grandparents.
It's my husband's grandparents, yes. And anyone knows that people of this age are not allowed to adopt children because of the age difference. They are much too elderly for these children.
Well, as far as the grandparents being too old for the children, I don't think that's true because they are young at heart, actually. And for grandparents of a fellow my age, they're actually younger than you would expect them to be. And as far as the children not having a mother and father, we see them every Sunday. Without fail, we go there every Sunday. And I'm sure that there are people who have grown up in institutions and in orphanages who have grown up to be successful people, having only seen their parents every so often. So I don't think that this is a deterrent to the kids' physical or mental health.
Well, now, is this a permanent thing, or do you feel, sir, that when you have sufficient income, I mean, you don't maintain that this is good as a...
Oh, no, of course not. This is not a permanent thing. It's just something that I feel is good for the children for now, of course.
Now, is it good for you now?
Oh, definitely. Because
In what way?
it gives me a chance to get myself organized and pay off a lot of debts which I accumulated previous to this happening.
In other words, do we understand that when you're in a good financial position, that then you want to do it?
Definitely, very definitely. I do want the children. I'm not
But you're not in a very good financial position
Right.
now.
Well, I don't know if my husband is trying to kid himself or me, but I feel that as long as his grandparents are shouldering the responsibility of caring for the children, that he will never have the incentive to improve his financial status. I think that if once the children are with us, that should be enough incentive for him, and that he will do better for himself and for his family.
Well, I disagree with this entirely. To begin with, I have a lot less debts than I had when I first got married. So I have accomplished something by not having to take care of the children. And it's not in the immediate future, but I can see where in the fairly near future that I will be able to take the children. But if
Do you
I take
feel, if I may interrupt, that this bickering, and this goes on all the time, and is the
Constantly.
basis of many other conflicts in the home, do you feel that this is affecting the well-being of the marriage? And do you feel that having each other is the important thing and that it's destroying that?
Exactly. I think that this situation, which I feel nothing can be done about right away, is, as it stands now, is destroying whatever happiness we do have at home. And I feel that it should be stopped, that we should stop arguing about it, and that's why we're here, actually, to try and get some kind of a decision.
Ms. Hurst?
Well, it's a very unusual situation. I think it's quite admirable that a young woman of this kind, wants to sacrifice enough to take in your children. It is the usual situation in a distinct reverse.
I agree.
Now, I would like to ask you, do you feel, under your present economic status, that you are willing to make the sacrifices that inevitably would go with bringing these children into the home?
Yes, I would.
Well, there's a specific answer. Now, I don't think there's any question. It may be that your grandparents, great-grandparents, are they?
My grandparents.
Are young at heart, but there is something known as a timetable, and these children are being reared in an environment that cannot have the time span, reasonable expectancy, of course, that it can in your home. Your children are going to be reared away from you during very important years. It seems to me that the sacrifices you need to make are well worth it, considering what you can do for the wholeness of your home. And again, I want to reiterate, I think this is an admirable young woman who is willing not only to take on these responsibilities, but invites them. I would say that I think that her attitude that she married you merely for children, I don't really think she quite meant that. She married you for yourself and children, as I
Yes,
look at her
yes.
and listen to her. And I would urge that you bring these children into the home and give them the privilege of this young mother who will grow with them into a family relationship that is going to be invaluable to your children.
Dr. McCracken?
I would have to support that, and I'm afraid, I shouldn't say I'm afraid, because I feel it strongly, that I would have to find unhesitatingly for the wife in this case. I think you do yourself a wrong, I think you do her a wrong, and I think you do those two children a wrong. It seems to me that you have a narrow conception of marriage if you think of it as a case of sharing life with one another and don't look beyond that to the rearing of a family for which, after all, the father and mother have immediate and continuing responsibility. And you must really lay at your door irresponsibility if you allow your children to be brought up in ostrich-like fashion. Think about the ostrich. And as for the dates, I would suggest that since the grandparents are so kindly disposed toward the children, they might reverse the aid, help you with your financial situation, and enable you to set up a home of your own where your wife too might have children.
Dr. Davis?
I have the feeling that the young man here is underestimating the value of children for a marriage, and I have the feeling that he is overestimating the difficulty involved in bringing these children into your home. I think the common experience of the world is that there's nothing that can add so much to a marriage between a man and a woman as a family. And I can imagine nothing that would make it important for you to deprive your marriage, your wife and yourself, and your marriage and your home from the creative influence that will be brought into it by these children. And I certainly go along with what Mr. Hurst said a moment ago about this timetable. One of the big difficulties in bringing up children is the problem of keeping close to them. We oldsters so easily get away from our children. They have young ideas, we have older ideas. And that certainly is probably more true now than you realize it, and it's going to be considerably more true as between your children and your grandparents. I think it's very important that they should be brought into a home that is presided over by a young man and a young woman. And I think that if you'll go into this thing with imagination, with adventuresomeness, and above all with love, you will be surprised at how much happiness and strength these children will bring to you both.
Well, according to this board, there is a misconception here, especially considering the age of these people, as to the purpose of marriage, which is not just to have each other, but to have a family. That if the man wants to be a responsible husband and father, he should realize that the time will come when the great-grandparents will not be able to take care of the children anyway. So why not make the adjustment now in the interest of a family? Certainly this husband, I believe this board agrees, ought to be glad that he has a wife who loves the children, as Ms. Hurst said, and wants them. Now, the board is of the opinion that it all involves a sense of responsibility, something that the husband just must recognize. Whether the terminology is keeping ahead of the sheriff or keeping the wolf from the door, the matter of economics can certainly be disconcerting, wreak a lot of havoc in the general scheme of things, certainly in marriage. Now, here is one of those situations that can be salvaged by some judgment instead of strong emotion and sensitive feelings. Now, this young woman is the complainant.
Mr. Alexander, do you call this a merit? When I married, I did so to have a family, children, and a home. But now I see it's not so. I work during the day, and my husband works nights. We don't see each other. Just when he comes in, I go out, and when I come in, he goes out. And I came here to settle this, because when I try to discuss this, I don't get any satisfactory answer from him.
All I can say is this is a temporary situation from which there is no alternative.
Temporary, he says, 365 days and nights.
Well, sir, what would you say is the trouble with your wife?
The trouble with my wife is that she would like to have her cake and eat it. She would like to have money for clothes. She would like to have money for vacations, to pay all the bills. She would like to fill every desire our children have, but she doesn't ask where the money is coming from, and the responsibility is on me, and at the same time she's not willing to make any sacrifice towards
Well,
it.
sir, is it necessary for you to work nights in order to accomplish this?
The answer is yes. I drive a cab, and the take it at night is much higher than I could possibly make in the daytime.
I don't believe in his explanations because he's always thinking how to make more money and sacrifice our marriage. He was even thinking to take a job as a traveling salesman because the take is bigger, how he puts it.
The what?
The take is bigger, how he puts it.
Well, now, what question do you want to ask this boy?
I want to settle this because when I come home from work, I want to have my husband home and be together with him, not just a hello and goodbye.
Well, how about the money?
But what good is it to have the money when you're not together?
And what good is it being together if we don't have any money?
Dr. Davis?
Well, I'm glad you've come to mediate this problem because it seems to me that it is something to do some very serious thinking about. Possibly a good place to begin is for all of us to remind ourselves that we're dealing with about the most priceless possession that a couple can have. If you gave me $1 million right this moment, I would consider that quite a valuable possession. And I would guard it, and I would protect it, and I wouldn't let anything happen that would interfere with that $1 million.
Now on the point of working days and nights so that they don't get together.
Well, let me just say, I want to point out that your marriage, and that's what we're talking about, is far more valuable than any $1 million. And whatever the final settlement is, let it be something that's going to preserve and guard and keep this very, very valuable possession. Let nothing happen to interfere with this marriage. I think, moreover, that two intelligent people ought to be able to make such an adjustment of their respective working schedules as to make this home and this marriage what we all want it to be. You've got 3 jobs, you've got 3 salaries, and it would seem to me that that ought to be sufficient to meet your needs. It may be that you can't have everything that at the moment you think you ought to have. Maybe you will have to get along with not quite so much income.
Well, Dr. Davis, what is your specific suggestion?
My specific suggestion is a general suggestion. I don't think we can work out the details here, but I think this man ought to try to get along and make ends meet without working 2 work days, so to speak. I think you ought to make an adjustment at that point, even if it means sacrifice. Maybe work a day and a half, so to speak. But certainly cut down your hours of work so you can give more time to this marriage and to your home. And I think the wife ought to be able to make comparable adjustments. But whatever you do, give up, sacrifice anything in order to make this marriage the fine, creative experience which I know you want it to be.
Ms. Hurst?
Well, I'd like to ask a practical question here. Is your income insufficient, sir, by itself, or do you need the cooperation that your wife gives you financially?
At this time, I need the cooperation of my wife.
Well, it does seem to me that for a married pair of people, you have no marriage. What time do you have together? You leave in the morning,
Right.
and you come home in the evening, just probably as your husband is leaving
Right.
for his job.
That's right.
I would ask you, most emphatically, if I may, a man of your obvious equipment, is it essential of all the activities that are open to a man at your time of life and with your apparent mentality that you have this night job on a cab, particularly when the 2 of you are earning? I don't know what you meant by the 3rd salary, Dr. Davis.
Well, as I
You said
understand it,
3.
he's working practically 2 shifts, which means 2 salaries.
No,
Is it-
I don't think that's true at all, Dr. Davis. Isn't it true, sir, that a cab driver at night is able, for various reasons known best to cab drivers, is able to get a bigger take than cab drivers in the daytime, that you can work certain places which are more remunerative? Is that right?
That's right. A cab driver at night can work more hours than the man who has the day shift. More hours, of course, means more money.
And conceivably, the people who ride at night for one or another reason are more liberal, etc.
Yes, I didn't quite understand that, but it is still true, presumably, that you get more than a normal day's work, which with your wife's day's work would seem to me to maybe be more than you really need.
Well, Dr. Davis, I think to reduce this to its simple, essential elements, these people need all the money that they can get. And they're getting more money this way than they'd get otherwise.
Are there children?
Yes, there are 2 children. One of them is about 5 years old. Dr. McCracken?
Well, I think it's an intolerable situation. Doesn't seem to me that it can possibly make for a happy marriage, and I don't see how you can expect that your children will grow up as at your best you would want them to grow up. I think of the husband as the breadwinner, and I therefore sympathize with the attempt to make the maximum amount of money in whatever way may seem best to the husband, short of breaking up the home. It rather seems to me that the concession should be made by the wife in this case, and I would very much wonder whether it might not be possible to have part-time work, say in the mornings, so that you could be at home in the early afternoon for your husband, and in the late afternoon and evening for the children. What kind of home can you have where children arrive to find that their parents are gone? And apart altogether from economic security, think of the instability for these young people as they grow up finding their parents in absentia practically all the
Ms.
time.
Hurst, would you go along with that? The point here would seem to be that there are children and they need attention and they're not getting it. The second point is, as made by Dr. McCracken, that income is necessary, and the man will stipulate can earn more at night than he can in the daytime. Now, if he continues his night job and this wife has a part-time job to augment that and gives attention to the children and can spend some time with her husband in the daytime, that certainly would be an improvement.
I'd like to ask a question first. You made a remark. You said that your wife demanded the amenities, the luxuries of life. Is that why? That's what I'm trying to find out. Is she working because it is essential, or is she one of these women who yearns for the luxuries beyond those that you can supply? Could you make a living for this family as it is now without the amenities, without the latest in gadgets, and without the accessories that go for luxury?
No, because I would like to give my children something more than just the minimum today.
Well, and I agree, you have no home at all. It's a mockery of a home. And if the wife is willing to break down her workaday into a half day, I agree with Dr. McCracken that seems to me to be the most obvious solution.
Well, that would seem to be the opinion of the board. You go along with that,
Yes.
Dr. Davis, Dr. McCracken. Well, then, to sum up, if in fact these people have just a kind of waving acquaintance, see as little of each other as has been indicated, certainly no home and no marriage worth the name exist. Everybody knows that it costs a lot of money to live these days. The need for all the income they can get is clear. But the board now agrees that some compromise must be made, and since there are children involved, perhaps the wife could herself make an adjustment, work part-time, be home with her husband during the day, and find time during these hours for her children as well. As we express our thanks to our mediators and bring this session of the Court of Human Relations to a close, may the hope be expressed as well that all resentment will be withdrawn and that the people in controversy will see the wisdom of compliance. Said a philosopher, "Some people are always grumbling because roses have thorns. I'm thankful that thorns have roses." I guess it's all in the point of view. The poet puts it this way: "What one approves, another scorns, and thus his nature each discloses. You find the rose bush full of thorns. I find the thorn bush full of roses."